We good?
Yes.
All righty. Then I will call this meeting to order, and if you would all rise for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That we
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Roll call. I'll do that now.
Thank you so much.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Here.
Cindy?
Here.
Eric? Mark? Mark? Hello, Mark, can you hear us?
Are you there, Mark?
See if you can talk to him, Mindy. Is he on?
Mark, can you hear me? Mark? Okay.
Oh, hit the speaker button. Maybe that's what happened.
Now, how's that?
Yeah, I'm in
Okay.
I couldn't hear anybody else answer when I barely heard you call their name to see if they were in the room. So
Okay, I think we've got it fixed.
okay, we'll see.
Bob?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I need a motion for approval of the minutes for March 20, 2017.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by J. Stanton Gregor, seconded by Bob Lynn, that we approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to amendment and approval of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
It's been moved by Bob Lynn, seconded by member Nancy Strand, that we approve the meeting agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the meeting agenda is approved. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have a public hearing on ordinance 2017-03, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code sections 14.20.070 and 14.20.390A, section 1, and that's municipal harbors, to eliminate a prepayment discount on annual mortgage rates and to increase the minimum rental term to qualify for the annual mortgage rates. Is there any public testimony on this ordinance at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is bid awards. And we do not have any bid awards this time. The next item on the agenda is visitors' views related to the agenda. Any visitors wishing to share their views on the agenda are welcome to do so at this time. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak to an agenda item?
I'm Bo Varsano, and I represent myself. Okay. And I want to talk about HR 232. Is there a 3-minute limit?
If we don't have too many people, we can go a little bit over, but I'd kind of keep it close.
Okay. The primary intent of HR 232 is to promote a large-scale timber industry in the Southeast. I talked to the Alaska State Forester, and he told me that virtually all of the 2 million acres that is proposed to be selected by the state would eventually be clear-cut. It's not really in question. That map that you guys have with all the purple on it was put together over a bunch of years, starting in 2006 by a bunch of different agencies and groups, and the latest edition is pretty much what the Department of Forestry has in mind for selecting And that shows 2 million acres. That's pretty much exactly what it would look like. I can't speak to everything there, but I do live in Farragut Bay, so I'd like to talk about that a little bit. There is a big selection out there. It's 52,000 contiguous acres that has parts of Farragut Bay, Sanborn Canal, and Port Houghton. Likely to be selected, at least they want to. The DOF wants to select that area. Included in it is a huge portion of the Farragut River drainage and the incidental areas around it. There are 5 salmon streams in that area, including the Farragut River, which is a designated National Wild and Scenic River. All 6 species of Pacific salmon are in that river, and it's pretty hard to imagine that big of a chunk of that drainage being clear-cut, no matter how long it took. And it's good to remember that once it's clear-cut, it's on the timber base. It would be, as soon as that second growth matures, it would be cut again and again and again, probably in about 100-year rotations, something like that. That is not going to improve the salmon habitat there. And that salmon habitat, I would think, would be very important to Petersburg. It fills our dinner plates and our pocketbooks. And we're the town that fish built. I would think that Petersburg wouldn't want this to happen, and that wouldn't be in our benefit. I do believe that we need economic diversity in Southeast, but I do not believe that a large-scale timber industry based on old-growth logging is a good option for any of our communities, especially Petersburg. The fishing industry has always been really good to us here. And the timber industry in Southeast has generally had a history of failing for the communities that relied on it. And I'm not even sure how economically viable an old-growth timber industry is right now. You should realize that Viking Lumber, which is now the largest sawmill in Southeast, exports a significant percentage of the logs that they receive right now. Just because it's not marketable, it's not economically viable for them to saw them up. They can only use really high-grade logs, and everything else gets shipped to Asia. In my opinion, clean water, intact forests, and healthy fisheries are Southeast's most valuable economic assets. And the world is only getting more crowded and more polluted, and these assets only gain value as the years go by. And compromising those assets is not in our best interests as a community, for our lifestyle, as well as economically. And HR 232 does not adequately protect those things that are so important to us. And Petersburg should stand up and say no to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to an item on the agenda?
Hi, my name is Becky Knight, and I represent the Greater Southeast Alaska Conservation Community today. Our members utilize the Tongass for hunting, recreation, scientific research, and education, subsistence, sport, and commercial fishing. Many members reside within the Petersburg Borough. As previously stated, we remain opposed to HR 232, the State National Forest Management Act of 2017, and we urge you to oppose it today as well. We provided verbal testimony and submitted to you a detailed statement of opposition to the proposed legislation, which was included in the last meeting record and was available to the public, and still is, on the March 20 meeting tab under details. Hopefully all of you have had an opportunity to review that statement and understand our reasonable grounds for opposition to 232. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Mike Steinrock. I live on Birch Street, and I'm representing myself. I support the resolution opposing HR 232. There are many reasons to oppose this bill. I believe that salmon habitat protection is probably one of the main reasons that would concern us all. There have been many local and very articulate voices that have spoken to this concern, and I just want to say thank you for listening and to considering and hopefully supporting this resolution. Thank you very much.
Brian? And if folks could speak directly into the mic, I know from experience it's really hard to hear if you're on the phone, the public testimony in particular.
Yeah, all right.
Raise it up, Mindy.
Do my singing thing here again. Thank you. Good afternoon, I'm Brian Lynch. I'm speaking in support of Resolution 2017-07 in opposition to HR 232. And I want to just say that I agree with the previous speakers here on what they presented. I think the biggest concern and threat we have here is to salmon habitat. And as I've spoken to this body several times concerning the value of fisheries to this community, it's the lifeblood of this community, and destruction of salmon habitat will mean reduced returns, reduced escapements, which invariably will reduce fishing time. I was a commercial fisheries manager for 20 years here, and am very acutely aware of what can happen in these situations. Also, there's kind of an interesting thing here, too. I am definitely opposed to these land trades. They have an article here that was in, as an editorial that was in Field and Stream magazine in August 16th, 2016, and the title of it is Transferring Control of Federal Lands Would Devastate Hunting and Fishing. And while this may not be the same as the concerns they mentioned here, but in all states or many states in the lower 48, there's been huge amounts of land that have been transferred from the federal government to the states, and invariably the state sells that land to private entities, which then restricts public access to hunting and fishing. And while this particular bill for Alaska may not do the same thing, I think it's something we all need to be very much aware of. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to an item on the agenda? Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, my name is David Beebe. I'm representing myself. I'd like to bring up an issue that was raised at the previous meeting, and I'll be quoting the Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development in its primer for city council members. And it relates to abstaining from voting. As you are aware, Assemblymember Eric Castro recused himself on the direction of the Petersburg District Ranger. And according to this, however, every council member must vote on every issue. A member can only abstain if the mayor has ruled that he or she has a conflict of interest on the matter being voted on. A council member must explain his or her conflict and get a ruling that a conflict does or does not exist. The mayor's ruling, whichever way it goes, may be overridden by a majority of the council. Also, it's important to understand perhaps the difference between recusal and abstaining. And the state of Alaska encourages its members to just declare, basically. And certainly if there is a pretty striking example of financial conflict of interest, then, for instance, Alaska legislators voting on oil bills who are receiving paychecks from oil companies, that those bills would obviously be involved with. And so I'm just encouraging the Assembly to consider any request for abstention to be carefully regarded according to Alaska statutes. I'd also like to point out that the testimony that I gave was, I tried to listen to, and it was so painful for me to hear the archived version of it. I would encourage the Assembly to make sure that this gets addressed. Maybe there's a way to, when I logged on, there were 3 different people already on there, and apparently one party might have been the cause of this. It sounded like a video game or something in the background. Some sort of telephonic interference was occurring and completely obscured several of my words and so forth. So I realize I'm exceeding my time at this point, so I will submit the testimony for the record.
All right,
thanks for this opportunity.
If I may just make a comment, we are definitely working on the sound system. We're trying to figure it all out. We will be getting a different phone to use in here, and if at all possible, we will get a phone that will hook into our sound system. So it's a work in progress, and I apologize.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to an item on the agenda?
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Fleming. I live here at 104 Lewis Lane. Again, I'm here representing myself. I hadn't thought I was here the last meeting, and I decided to come again. I just had wished that my message last time was that certainly this town derives so many benefits from the fish that are reared and swim in our waters that a lot more people that make their livings and everything would be here to step up and talk about it. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Too many people stay away from things like this. Last time I spoke of Alaska's position to learning from others and not to repeat the same mistakes. One of the other speakers gave her firsthand testimony, which was great. I would just echo that 30 years ago this month, I left the state of Maine in hopes of working in fisheries in Maine. I grew up there and witnessed, I became a fish nut from the time I was 5 years old. Crazy as it seems, but my life was charted out at that point. And I came to Alaska after seeing so much happen in Maine around me, the land. So there's a lot of timbering. A lot of people would sell their trees off for pulp to pay their taxes, take the gravel out of their lands, everything. There's a lot of damage and a lot of change in fisheries in Maine. Anyway, so 30 years ago I showed up in this state, and it was like in nirvana. Alaska had huge numbers of fish. I worked out in Bristol Bay when I first came up here. It was just amazing. And I'm here. Been here ever since. One of the things that when you come from a place that had something and lost it, and you come to a place that still has it, and there's still a dependable source for people, and you see how they get that is through the Constitution. It comes through hard fought battles in fisheries management. But when you get involved with that, it's like the fire is in your belly, and it urges you to fight for to keep what's important. And especially that's the case when you know what the alternative is. When you're from another place, when you see what's going on. Anyway, I'm not going to draw this out. I still would urge you to not support H.R. 232. I talked about it last time, and the idea of squeezing this last money out of the forest, where a lot of it's already given up a lot of the old growth logging, really, you should really examine what the risks are when you're going to go down that road. There's been plenty of work done to show that how habitat loses out and it's a longer-term effect than the short-term gain from taking the wood out. One of the things about fishing in Alaska, which I get to do now, but as a troller, but Alaska manages on wild stock basis, and these areas will be wild stocks, and by weakening more and more wild stocks, it can lead to tightening on management, openings for fishing. Clamping down on that ultimately affects people's pocketbooks. And so that's something you may look forward to, is more and more uncertainty in your fisheries management. So anyway, I will bid you adieu, and I just certainly hope that you folks do what's best for the community. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
This is for any subject, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I came to ask you, or to talk about the issue of fluoride in our water. The issue of fluoride in our water.
Can you state your name?
Oh, this is Sarah Reed, and I represent myself. So first I want to thank you for hearing each and every one of us on all these different topics and issues. And I want to start out by saying I don't claim to be an expert on the issue of fluoride, but I have done a lot of research on it. And I've come to find some pretty alarming things about it. Knowing that it's in our city water here in Petersburg made me research it even more and just kind of get some facts straight. Things that have been told to us from the time I was really little, thinking that it was safe and good and good for our health. It turns out that it's not so optimistic. I found an overwhelming amount of information from doctors and scientists and researchers and journalists that have stated information on fluoride having many adverse effects on the body, from the toll that it takes on your immune system to the damage that it causes in your neurological system, to contributing to osteoporosis and so much more. And whether or not we can all agree on the safety or the risks of fluoride, I think that all of us can agree that putting a pharmaceutical into a person's body should be the individual's choice and not forced upon anyone. And so I'm asking you guys as the council to maybe research it yourselves and see some of the risks and dangers of the fluoride that's in our city water right now, and to do what you can to take it out of the water, and let the residents and the visitors alike of Petersburg to make that choice for themselves if they want to be putting it into the water or into their own bodies or not themselves. So thank you for your consideration, and thank you for maybe looking into it yourselves and putting some time into actually searching out truth from fiction and all that it contains. So it's kind of an alarming journey. Thank you.
I have to say, this is one of the best attended midday meetings we've had in a long time.
Hey, my name is Alex Helms, and I'm representing myself. And I'm speaking with concern on the issue of fluoride in our drinking water. I'd first like to make it very clear that I'm not against the use of fluoride. I do believe that the topical use of fluoride, whether it is in the form of toothpaste or prescribed by a doctor, can be an effective tool for some people. My concern is that our borough is electively adding fluoride into our drinking water, which is not approved by the FDA. And my family has no control over the amount of medicine that is being ingested. I am constantly reminding my children to drink water, but will they be a candidate for dental fluorosis because of their increased water consumption? Could I be doing more harm than good to their teeth? Excuse me, I'm nervous. By encouraging them to drink more water when they have a headache or not feeling well. Something else that concerns me are babies that are formula fed. The majority of formula already contains fluoride. Once again, how do we control the amount of non-prescribed fluoride that is mixed into a baby's primary, if not only food source? Given the recommendation from the CDC of using bottled water to mix with formula to reduce dental fluorosis in infants, is it fair for a family's alternate choice to be purchasing plastic jugs from the grocery store? I don't feel like the burden is fair for our community members. Please reconsider the use of fluoride in our drinking water. Let each person and family make their own educated medical decisions, and most importantly, be able to control the dosage of fluoride being administered to themselves and loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dana Tinas. I'm representing myself, and I'm here today to say a few words about water fluoridation and the hazards it presents for our health. I'm not here to talk about teeth, but about human health. 3 things I want to mention in particular: fluoride's effect on bones and on the thyroid, and human freedom, the right to choose. I believe that you all, everyone on the assembly, that you all desire the best for the community of Petersburg. None of us, though, can have all knowledge. Even with the best intentions, mistakes and bad public policy can still be the end result. Witness the good intentions of one of our own local and well-respected dentists speaking in 1986 of the benefits to come with water fluoridation. I'm quoting from the Petersburg pilot of October 2nd, 1986. The dentist also noted that fluoridation of water could benefit older persons by helping strengthen their bones and prevent wrist and pelvic fractures, which are a significant danger to senior citizens whose bones grow more brittle with age. The dentist was wrong, but back in 1986, he didn't really have any way to know that he was wrong. We know now that dental fluorosis is a visible sign that children have already had too much fluoride. Those white, brown, or yellow spots show up on your teeth, and we see the evidence. But do you really think fluoride passes through the body, leaving all other tissues untouched? More studies have shown that fluoride contributes to osteosclerosis, skeletal fluorosis, leading to increased hip fractures and brittle bones. In countries such as China and India, there are some areas of very high parts per million of fluoride in the water naturally, as much as 9, which here we're not allowed to have more than 4. And their problem is how to get it out of the water, because by the time they're in their 20s, susceptible young people are already bent and crippled with skeletal fluorosis. In its early stages, this osteosclerosis looks just like arthritis. Do we have a lot of arthritis in our country? I think so, and at younger and younger ages. On the packages of sodium fluorides used by our local water department is the warning: danger, poison, toxic by ingestion. Target organs: heart, kidneys, bones, central nervous system, gastrointestinal system, teeth. The sodium fluoride comes from the Rigo Chemical and Mineral Corporation. Holly Renji requested the safety data from the Rigo company. It states, in addition to what I already said, medical conditions aggravated by long-term exposure, diabetes, and some forms of renal impairment, kidney impairment, chronic effects, mottling of teeth, bone damage, osteosclerosis, and fluorosis. Symptoms of fluorosis include brittle bones, weight loss, anemia, calcified ligaments, joint stiffness, and general ill health. There is an epidemic of hypothyroidism in our country, the condition of a low-performing or sluggish thyroid. In the 1950s, fluoride was actually used to slow down an overactive thyroid gland. Most of Europe does not fluoridate. One of the reasons is because this is a violation of human rights, an individual's right to choose their own medications or to choose not to be medicated. You may say, this policy was voted in by a majority of the voting public in Petersburg. Does my neighbor have the right to put me on Prozac? Can they decide for me that I should take statin drugs? It sounds crazy, but there has been at least one U.S. doctor calling for statins universally administered in the water to keep cholesterol levels low. And fluoride is a medication. Despite never having been approved as a drug by the FDA, it is added to water systems not to treat the water, as is the case with chlorine, but to treat the population. That makes it a medication. So, our local population is being mass medicated with no ability to control individual dosages. I have here a long paper which I will not read, entitled 50 Reasons to Oppose Fluoridation. I've printed copies for the Assembly to look at later if you wish. I've noticed that most pro-fluoride studies are of the variety which declare, experts say, the consensus among authorities is, and top men agree, lots of hand-waving, faith-based science. Therefore, I'm going to read just Reason 50 from this paper, which is written by Dr. Paul Connett, Professor of Chemistry at St. Lawrence University, New York. When it comes to controversies surrounding toxic chemicals, invested interests traditionally do their very best to discount animal studies and quibble with epidemiological findings. In the past, political pressures have led government agencies. Am I doing something wrong here?
No, keep going.
Okay.
I don't know why it's different.
In the past, political pressures have led government agencies to drag their feet on regulating asbestos, benzene, DDT, PCBs, tetraethyl lead, tobacco, and dioxins. With fluoridation, we've had a 50-year delay. Unfortunately, because government officials have put so much of their credibility on the line defending fluoridation, and because of the huge liabilities waiting in the wings if they admit that fluoridation has caused an increase in hip fracture, arthritis, bone cancer, brain disorders, or thyroid problems, it will be very difficult for them to speak honestly and openly about the issue. But they must, not only to protect millions of people from unnecessary harm, but to protect the notion that, at its core, public health policy must be based on sound science, not political pressure. They have a tool with which to do this. It's called the precautionary principle. Simply put, this says, if in doubt, leave it out. This is what most European countries have done, and their children's teeth have not suffered, while their public's trust has been strengthened. If we don't, okay, now it's me again. If we don't fluoridate the water, what's the alternative for those who want the effects of fluoride for their teeth? Topical application, toothpaste, the most direct and safest way to get it on the teeth. Today, I would like to ask the Assembly to consider putting this issue back before the public on the October ballot this year. I have here, which I'm going to hand out, a sample of a possible ordinance. Thank you, Deborah Thompson, for pulling information together, which helped greatly in this effort. And thank you, Borough Assembly, for allowing me to speak today and for considering this appeal. And now I'm going to hand out some things for you.
Thank you. And while we're waiting for Dana to hand those out, is there anyone else who would like to speak to an item on the agenda? Jim? Dana, can you hand those to Debbie and she can hand them out to us so we can move the meeting along? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Schrammick. I'm retired from the Forest Service. I spent my career here in Petersburg working on the Tongass. Initially, I was a hydrologist, and I, among other things, walked most of the streams on the Stikine area, literally. And we inventoried them. And a lot of those streams had been harvested already. And a lot of the things I did was looking at proposed harvest and past harvest and looking at what things to do and road building and all that. Later in my career, I kind of ran the geographic information system here. So I helped put together a way to inventory streams. I would like to speak in opposition to H.R. 232 and support your proposal to oppose it, because I believe that the amount of science that has gone into the improvement of managing streamside habitat in the Forest Service would be lost if you were to convert that land to the state and they would just kind of do whatever in order to make an omelet, you break a few eggs, type approach. And I think they would be very short-sighted in harvesting. I didn't know if I was going to come down here because I do a lot of babysitting of my 6-month-old grandson, and in a way I'm speaking for him, because if you were to go through with H.R. 232, his opportunities in the future would be far diminished. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Everyone who wanted to speak has had a chance to do so?
I do have a couple letters to read into the
Okay,
record.
then let's do that before we move on.
Hello, my name is Maria Smets, and I represent myself. Since the introduction of this resolution last month, I have heard it argued that now is not the time to speak out against H.R. 232. If and when the bill is passed, there will be a public comment period when we can all give our input as to which land should be chosen for transfer. I would argue that at that point, it is too late. It is undoubtedly scary and sometimes risky to stick your neck out for what you believe in. With so much on the line, including the very industry which this town is built upon, it's time for us to be bold and stand up for the region. With so much on the line, including the very industry, it is time for us to be bold and stand up for the protection of our home. The sooner the better. Today we have the opportunity to send a message to others in the region, to Representative Young and to Senators Murkowski and Sullivan. I urge the Assembly to pass this resolution today to clearly state that Petersburg values the land that we call home. Thank you, Maria. My name is Tor Benson, and I am representing myself. I am writing to encourage the committee to pass a resolution in opposition of H.R. 232. I am not opposed to harvesting timber, but I do not think the trade-offs of this proposal is in the best interest of our Southeast Alaska communities. The main issues I see with the current proposal are that the logging jobs generated will be short-term, logging of old growth is finite and short-term, there could potentially be impacts on salmon fisheries, and harvested trees can be exported from Alaska and even the U.S. in the round. I understand that the state of Alaska's economy is largely based on our natural resources, and that in order for our communities to continue to prosper, we need to be able to use them. When looking for ways to use these resources, I would prefer a long-term outlook that would benefit our communities and state the most. A couple of years ago, when there was a timber sale on Kupernoff Island at Tonka, the company and crew were all from the lower 48. These types of short-term jobs do not benefit our community, and because the state of Alaska does not have an income tax, the income made by these individuals leave with them and benefit Alaska very little. If the 2 million acre land transfer is approved, then the Forest Service will be managing less land, which will likely mean staff reductions in Petersburg and around Southeast Alaska. The trade-off of these short-term non-resident logging jobs for the loss of full-time resident Forest Service jobs does not benefit our communities. My second concern is that the logging industry is requesting access to old-growth timber, which is another short-term plan. Bryce Dahlstrom, the vice president of Viking Lumber in Kloak, testified in February of 2016 before Congress and stated that his company needs old-growth timber because it is the only timber that has a profitable market. He stated that the industry can't survive on second growth because of low value and the need for different infrastructure. The Forest Service long-term management plan is to shift away from old growth to second growth over the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not an expert on the timber market, but if this is true, then we are just prolonging the eventual transition of the logging industry from old growth to second growth, which doesn't help the industry in the long run. As a commercial fisherman, I make my living by harvesting the resources of Southeast Alaska. I also see H.R. 232 as having a potential negative impact on salmon fisheries in Southeast. I seined for salmon during the summer of 2013 when we had a record return of 93 million pink salmon. I believe that this was mainly due to the intact system that is the Tongass National Forest. In order for such a magnificent salmon run, every river system in Southeast must produce, and for that to happen, it needs to be a functioning system, which I feel logging would degrade. I do believe the more industries Southeast Alaska has, the stronger our community will be. So I am not opposed to the harvest of timber, but I am also concerned that with this proposal, we will be trading short-term logging and milling jobs for renewable and community building jobs in salmon fisheries and forest service. The current proposal will not bring long-term logging jobs to Southeast Alaska. There is no guarantee that any of this lumber will actually be milled in Alaska, and the state is unlikely to put stipulations on the timber sales because it will reduce the number of potential bidders. So it is likely that this bill will not even help Viking lumber. I hope the committee will take these thoughts into account when considering passing the resolution in opposition of H.R. 232. Thank you for your service and time, Tor Benson.
All right. Okay, moving on to visitors' views unrelated to the agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to an item that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to board, commission, and committee reports. There were none filed. And there is nothing on today's agenda, on a consent agenda for today. So we will move on to the report of other officers, and we have an update on the Board of Equalization. And is Arnie here? Somebody? Okay. Arnie Erickson, our Borough Assessor, will be updating the Assembly on whether there will need to be a Board of Equalization meeting today at 3 o'clock. And how about if we take a 5-minute at ease while we wait?
How old is Old Grove?
It's older than me.
Older than me?
Maybe not.
Maybe not that old.
Did you? I was going to ask you if that's going on now.
I was wondering, how old is Old Grove?
Oh my God, was that?
I guess trees that fall down the pipeline, but, you know, if you look at all the pictures of people 30, 40 years ago, everything.
Okay, what did that came from?
We had to
cut it all out. And put plastic in it.
Geez, we're on their third. Everybody used to build houses. And some of the pictures of like when you were there, like when Bowen built their house. You could see the house. I mean, there were no trees around them. And that's all grown up since in the last 30 years. You're up there? I didn't see you. Top LA up there. I remember that. No, I remember. That's Old Grove. That is Old Grove. That's Old Grove. That's what Old Grove looks like. I remember those days. Long hair.
That looks like that guy on that one.
That's awesome.
Rock and roll band.
Yeah.
Guitar player.
A baby.
Oh. Looks like a lot of people.
I wonder if you heard my argument.
Just a baby.
Sorry, guys.
Who are you?
So is that? Yeah. 20-something.
Yeah, we can.
That's right.
There's some different
Yeah, I didn't even. Oh, there's people in my way, that's why. I didn't see Bob, I thought it was Bob and then Cindy.
Hello, hello. It just didn't seem like it was working.
It's a bad obsession. Sorry, I said it's a bad obsession. No, it's good.
We had a layover, changed flights into Outreach Airport, and go through security again in Detroit. We get 2 hours.
To get through the...
Because we went through security, I put espresso coffee in my bag to carry on, and they did not appreciate that.
No, espresso bad, bad.
And the 3 of us were traveling together, but they decided only Jeff was really the guilty party, and so they pulled him out and him down. Quincy and I just stood there.
Food is the big thing.
So you'll just be here, Arnie, talking to this for me, and as soon as she gavels back in, you're up, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear it all, Mark?
I didn't hear anything about
Oh, can you? Okay, good.
No.
You can't find this coffee here. Right.
I know, that's a tough one.
Yeah, we gotta figure out how to hook our telephone system.
Yeah, no, that's all
Are you going to have any excitement at 3?
Yeah, take some paper pills.
Yes.
And then you asked me if I can give a report back in a minute. And then
Cindy can get a second.
I didn't even know how many were there 2 or?
that'd be construction your report. I'm like, what?
No, they're just like.
Oh, that's you? I thought it was.
That's what I thought.
Okay, so all you have to do is say, yeah, we are. Yep.
I'm a lot better in this building.
Okay, I didn't know.
My eyes.
I didn't know. I think
All right.
thinks that we're
I was
supposed to
telling us good.
rules and
Go tell
regulations.
him, go tell him.
No, I.
Oh, you should see the pictures of me. No, a whole lot skinnier and hair down to my waist.
What are we missing, Nancy?
Looks like.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
No, she's got a minute and a half.
I've never even shot
You
it.
keep track.
Yeah, she's, just for myself, kind of like can dawdle otherwise.
Hope you got enough, David.
Oh, yeah, I know, kid, I'm sorry.
This going to be it?
Waiting for Nancy. All right, and we will resume our meeting. We have Arnie Erickson, the Borough Assessor, on hand to update us on the Board of Equalization. Take it away, Arnie.
Arnie Erickson, I represent the contract assessor, who is Mike Renfro. This year we received 54, if you were to number the individuals, 54, but it comes out to 74 actual separate pieces of property. We like to get signatures on all those where they accept our recommendation. There are a couple of those who are still waiting for signature. At this time, 16 are pending. So I would say you're going to be receiving somewhere between 13 and 16 appeals for your consideration this afternoon. And we have one appeal that will be coming to you, I'm sure, from in the annexation area, and the remainder have primarily to do with the area that we recognized for consideration this year, looking at the equity of land values. And those remain resolved. Oh, excuse me, we do have 2 down the narrows that are coming to you. And we've gone through this the last few years. I'm sure you know your duties, or what the BOE as a body does, and that type of thing. So I don't think I've got to go into that unless you've got specific questions.
Arnie, if you wouldn't mind, please going over what it is that they can that they decide on, the criteria.
Okay.
Not just for our benefit, but also for the public listening.
Let me make sure I got the right thing here. What you're going to be gathered this afternoon to be hearing are the assessor's recommendation and the appellant's grievance. And so we render an opinion of value. State statute calls for that to be at hopefully 100% of market value. How do we measure that? We take a sales price when we know it versus the assessed value. Hopefully they will equal each other. Right now, Petersburg is about 92%. We look at it 3 ways: by the cost approach, sales comparison, or by income. In Petersburg, our residential property, which we'll be hearing today, is done under the cost approach. Burden of proof is in the appellant. They're required to provide factual information to support their appeal. You as a body, your function is to hear the facts, or hear the presentation and base your decision on a finding of facts. You can't make up
things, say, well, this seems burdensome, therefore we're going to, it has to be based on something of true fact. An appeal must establish that the evaluation, in other words, for an appeal to be considered and an adjustment to be made, it has to be established that the evaluation is unequal, excessive, improper, or the property was undervalued. You have all received a large handout. On page 27, it refers to these. And then the state statutes governing this are 29.45, 110 to 29.45, 210. And so essentially, you hear the testimony and you make a decision based on the presented facts. And that's it in kind of in a nutshell. There's a lot more in the packet, but that's pretty much it.
Does anyone have any questions of Arnie? All right, thank you very much. We will be meeting again with you at 3 o'clock this afternoon in Assembly Chambers.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have Trey Atkinson from Southeast Alaska Power Association, who will be giving us a presentation. Are you all set up, Trey, or do you need a moment or two?
I think so. We'll probably take 2 minutes here at the most. Sign quick.
And this is just a brief update on SEPA's activities.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little background, just for the record. Trey Atkinson, CEO of Southeast Alaska Power Agency. Give you a little update today on kind of where we're at and where we'll be going. A little background for folks. Where at? With the lesson earlier. Hey, you got a laser pointer. Awesome. Hey, can I borrow that?
Well, it worked. I was just playing with it. Right here in the middle. Thank you. Mike.
Anyway, first of all, thanks for letting me speak today in your nice new facility here. I greatly appreciate that. So we'll just kind of roll through these real quick, and maybe you'll find some value there. So, for folks that aren't familiar with our organization, we're a joint action agency created through state statute. We're your regional wholesale power provider. We provide about 60% of the power for the combined area that SEPA serves as Ketchikan, Petersburg, and Wrangell. I'll show you a little map a little bit later on that for folks that need to envision how all that's set up. We're governed by municipal appointed directors, and several folks that have cycled through here have been on our board and greatly appreciate that. We own 2 hydro projects, Tyee and Swan Lake, 175 miles of transmission line, and also I have 14 miles of submarine cable, times 4, because we have 4 individual conductors on all those crossings. We offer a bundle of different regional services as part of our postage stamp rate, which has been at 6.8 cents for over 19 years now. And we also give rebates fairly regularly back to the communities we're served. So I thought it'd be kind of fun today just to talk a little bit, quick glimpse of the past for folks who may not be familiar with the projects. And so this is Tyee Lake tunnel construction in 1983. Both of the projects that SEPA owns, Swan Lake and Tyee, were part of the 4-dam power pool, the 4 dams that were created before. It's kind of a little bit of a misnomer because Tyee's a lake tap. And segues nicely into this slide. So it's an 8,300 foot unlined power tunnel, and then there's a penstock and 2 Pelton wheels, which are a typical type of turbine for a high head application. Here's a picture of Swan Lake when it was being constructed, also back in 1983. It's kind of fun to look at these old pictures and see the cranes and stuff they've got going on. The dam at Swan Lake's 174 feet tall, 430 feet long. And that's the finished product at Swan Lake. So just remember kind of what this looks like. I'll show you the new Swan Lake reservoir expansion. I've sent you pictures in our quarterly update pretty regularly, but you can see what it looks like now. So I think I skipped one there. I got to figure out how to go back. Let me see here. See if I can do that. Hey, there we go. So interconnection happened after those two were built to support the communities both north and south. These are some kind of cool old pictures. You can see them laying the submarine cable out, just put it on inner tubes and then sunk it. It also highlights some of the risks that we have up in this area with our 4 crossings, is that these are self-insured by SEPA. And so that means, it's not if and when we'll have to eventually replace those. We do studies periodically, usually about every 5 years, just to check on the condition of the cable. They are rated at 138 kV, and we run them at 69. So we run them at a lower voltage, which actually extends the life a little bit. We don't have a tremendous amount of scouring on the bottom that is typical for submarine cables that wear them out. So we're in pretty good shape, but you do see, GCI has to have a few cable failures just due to underwater landslides. So there are things like that, or somebody hooks them with an anchor that could potentially have some damage. So we do have 4 conductors, and they're separated, so if there's something that occurs underwater, hopefully it only just takes out 1 line, and out of that 4, we only need 3, so we have 1 spare. So following that, that left the 2 projects, one feeding south and one feeding to the north. And in 2009, the Swan-Tai intertie was completed that connected the whole system together, which has multiple benefits. So this kind of brings us to where we're at today. So our infrastructure is over 30 years old now, so we've been doing significant reinvestment as we go. New SCADA systems, we're working on upgrading communication systems, exciters, and switchgear upgrades. Also added 100 helipads to the Swan-Tai intertie to give us better access so we can respond to outages as needed. As you can see, this is really rugged territory that we have to go into, and we're very familiar with that. Also, we've been working over the last few years to maximize our existing infrastructure to get the best bang for the buck and essentially knock off the low-hanging fruit.
Trey, can you explain what SCADA is to folks who are
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry if I try not to use too many acronyms, and of course we have a pretty acronym-rich industry. So SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition. So it's basically the communication system and links into the power plants where we can get feedback and see all the different attributes of the plants, pressures, temperatures and vibration and all those other important things that we monitor. Relaying and all that feeds in that as well. Thanks for the question. Swan Lake Reservoir expansion, this is the finished product. We got it pretty much substantially complete in November. And you can see on this side over here, this is the new flashboard system. These are designed to migrate downstream in the event that we have the 300-year event that's never actually occurred yet. So this used to be a fixed space here, and it just used to naturally flow over that. There was no control, and now we have this large gate here to pass flows as we spill. So original elevation was 330 for our FERC permit, and now we're able to run the lake up to 345. So that gives us about 25% more active storage in the reservoir. What that really means is it can potentially offset about 800,000 gallons worth of diesel generation a year. So a pretty big benefit. Original project was estimated about $13.3 million. I think we're going to come in probably $1 million or less below that. So the project was completed pretty much well within our schedule, and we had a very compressed schedule due to the contract award. And so I was really happy with the progress that our team made. So this is kind of a similar slide, but I'll just note we do have water up on the flashboards here. This is 6.6 feet over the original high level. or license level. So we're actually able to get some water up on it in the late fall, tested the flashboards, no leaks, and of course the water levels are down about 35 feet now, so looking for inflows to come. And I'll show you some lake levels here as we roll through this a little bit later. Little enhancements we did along the way. This is a debris removal platform that's off to the side of the dam. We get a lot of logs and stuff in the lake, and we have to have a way to get them out. Before, they were just kind of rolling up to the side, and there was a small parapet wall there. This will be a little safer for operators, so they can get the logs out safely. Moving on, we're doing lots of other projects. We had a CT and relay upgrade at the Wrangell switch that we just put in last year, and that'll just enhance some of the feedback signals that we get from our relay. Mentioned earlier about satellite communication systems improvements. We've just migrated to a different provider since our old one went out of service at the end of the year. Just kind of wrapping up that transition at Swan Lake, and we're getting that up and operating, getting the bugs worked out of it, and then we'll implement here at Tyee on the far left-hand side. This is a new platform that was built out at the Tyee facility. Took special permitting. It was off of our established land, and we had to move it out further in order to get line of sight for third contact. And then this one up here is, you can actually see the lake in the background if you look carefully. If you've ever flown over Tyee, up on the very side of the hill up here is essentially the inlet gate house. And so we'll have the ability up here to put satellite communications down to the weir down there for communications for lake levels. So this is what the Tyee Lake level or outlet used to look like, and you see down here in the lower part of the picture down here, there's a bunch of rocks, and basically had a big landslide that came down and deposited these rocks here, and then these logs all stacked up over since the 80s. And one problem we had is that we were getting some spill down through. Actually, you can see it in that picture, some little white right there where it's flowing through, and we really couldn't get an accurate spill measurement, and really couldn't control the lake level to our full licensing potential. So this is some of the low-hanging fruit that I'm talking about, as well as the Swan Lake raise that we did. This is an effort that we've been working on the last couple of years. So we went in and we actually built this weir over here so we could control, and of course we had to dig this all out, that previous picture with all the logs, and this goes down like 100 feet. We haven't even got close to the bottom yet. So as you get into this and all these boulders, then we get water migrating in through the cracks in the boulders, and so we go back in every year and we try to seal that up. We found a low-cost solution. They make a foam that you can actually spray in there. They do it for sealing off mining shafts and stuff like that. It's super strong, lightweight, fly it in, and disperse it in there, and chemically safe and all that kind of good stuff. Up at Tyee site too, it's a remote place to get into. There's no way to get in there. We actually are assembling a platform here for a safety shelter, and we'll have some comms and other things in that as well. So one item that we're working on, when they built the Swan Tyee intertie, these guy wires over here, you can see they're kind of off to the side of this protective device here, and I don't like the way these are. We've inspected these regularly. We're not seeing a lot of wear on them, but so we're going to be proactive, and over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to do so many a year and eventually change all these out and insert this, what they call a guy thimble, and that will help protect the cable for the long term. Another item we're working on, we've got a long-term issue here at Tyee. So the access for Tyee comes in around this area, and then our harbor's up here. We're working with the Corps right now to see if we can partner with them to establish a road out here to deeper tidewater area here. This big sandbar builds up every 10 years or so, and you got to dredge it out, and then you got to find a place to put it. We have a bunch of spoils left over from when they did the original tunnel, and we're hoping to use those to just build a road down through along tidewater here and then move the dock out. That will give us ability to move barges in and bring materials in, emergency evacuation, all those type of good things. This is back at Swan now. You can see we've got a pretty significant landslide here, probably about the size of 3 football fields. I mean, these are full-size logs down here at the bottom. Gives you a little bit of an idea how massive it is. This is just one of the hazards that we've got to deal with, and then once all that debris gets in the lake, then how do you get it out? What do you do with it? You can see the sides of the lake just go straight up. So it's a difficult challenge, and so this leads to another project that we're working on as well. Fat-fingered that one. So anyway, we're putting a debris boom in, the new debris boom at Swan that goes across the whole lake in front of the dam. And this new debris boom will have debris screens that will come down 24 inches. And there used to be a center anchor in the middle to hold the belly of it. And we've devised a new plan to shore anchor that portion off so we can get rid of the anchor that's in the middle. Because eventually that corrodes over time and you lose it. And it's a huge, massive undertaking to get this new anchor out there and install it in the lake and get it out in the right position. So we've re-engineered something new. On the slate coming up here this year, this is one of our larger projects. It'll be a Swan Lake exciter and switchgear replacements. And essentially, these cabinets that real estate there's all this stuff's going to be moved out and new stuff put in and then recommissioned. So I mentioned new Swan Lake debris boom. We also have a large Tyee transmission line marker ball replacement effort going on. They get faded over the years. They get difficult to see. Sometimes they slide and move on the lines as well. We've installed all those helipads out on the SDI. So now some of them, since the terrain's really steep, they're difficult to get up and on and safely exit as well. So we've got some ladders we've got to go out and install on that. We also do line clearing. We've got 2 brush clearers that work for us full-time based out of Wrangell, and then we contract other areas and we'll bring a whole team in to swath through those. The alders, as you guys know, those grow up pretty fast. But that's a really important thing. That's why we have one of the such high reliability on our system as we do. We're very diligent on our line clearing. So yeah, we're doing this. Just regular stuff we do out in the plants, SBC, spill prevention plans, updates, things like that. We also have done some improvements out at our marine terminals. Everywhere the submarine cables come up out of the water, you got to have a marine terminal where it transition goes back in over to overhead. And we also, at those marine terminals, our cables, our sub cables are actually filled with oil. So we've got head tanks for that. We monitor pressures, and that's how you would, it'd be your first indication if you had a leak. You'd see some pressures falling there. We also did roofing and siding at the Tyee crew quarters out there this last summer and got that wrapped up. Of course, we got our annual T-line maintenance, transmission line maintenance. We just awarded a 3-year contract on that, and looking forward to getting after that here in early May. This year I'm also be working on doing a review of a third turbine out of Tyee. Folks that might be familiar with that facility, we actually got a hole for a third turbine out there. And I'll talk about stuff here in just a second, and hopefully I'm not going too long here. That'll show, why that might not make sense right now, but it could in the future. So, we good on time, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Okay. So just a little forward-looking to get people thinking. It's one of the things that SEPA does is we kind of try to do planning, and obviously that's very difficult because we see this weather volatility we're getting. Our reservoirs are very flashy; they have a lot of volatility. Right now, our resources are pretty well balanced with the loads. The only thing that varies much is the timing of inflows and how they come in. For example, we have everybody knows we have quite a bit of snow in the upper areas. Actually, we'll be out doing snow surveys this week to determine the water content of the snow and how much we can expect coming off the mountain. So what we're hoping is that the lower levels are frozen up in pretty solid ice. The top stuff comes off, and then it slowly, gradually comes into the reservoir. If it comes in too fast, the reservoir is too small, typically to capture it all, and then we end up spilling that energy. So this is a good map. I show it at just about every presentation I do. And the Swan Tyee interties is red line here. So that kind of gives you an idea if this was built and then that line connected to Ketchikan. Tyee was built and then connected all you folks up this way. And what is the most important takeaway from this slide is this number right here is, on the whole system, we have less than 12,000 meters. So when you start thinking about future and future development with only 12,000 meters, how do you fund and take care of the debt service for like $100 million or $200 million project? And that's really my challenge is trying to figure out the timing of new assets coming in and how do we pay for them with the least impact. And I will note the Swan Lake raise was completed without a rate increase. We were able to do that through some refinancing of existing debt, plus we also got partial grant from the state as well. So this is some information I captured out of a load study we did here recently. And I put Petersburg on here just so people could kind of get a quick glance at what it's been and potentially where it might go. So you can see what it did here in the early years. And a lot of this big uptick here in usage happened when fuel prices went up. Everybody went over to was actually incentivized in some ways in some of the communities to install electric heat. And then over the last 3-4 years, its loads have actually been going down. Some of that is definitely related to a little bit warmer weather trend. But so if you look at the statistics, the population is a very good indicator of how the communities do over time. And right now, population of Petersburg is just kind of pretty steady. And so the black line is kind of where, is really where I anticipate things to go with loads, unless some other large load, industrial load or something comes on the system. And then factor in greater efficiency of light bulbs and other things that transition into heat pumps and things of that nature. The red would be if we had unusually high growth, 1.13% as this model is based on right here. So for the whole system, this kind of gives you an idea where we're at, and and this is kind of the range up here of the system, how much energy we can get in the system. So if we continue down this trend, we're not going to really need any new large projects for several years. Granted, the challenge with hydro development is it takes 10 years typically to get one licensed and online. So that's the big nut there, is try to figure out how do you time those so they meet what you're trying to do. This slide, I just threw it in just to kind of give you an idea, and I talked earlier about the third turbine at Tyee. So this is our system capacity, is that, how much can SEPA put out megawatt-wise, and what's the load requirement. And as you can see here, it's just a couple of times a year that we're really up in this area. And granted, this is a 2014 chart, and this year temperatures were a bit colder, and we did go over 40 several times. But by and large, it's fairly small. And so that's why sometimes you'll hear us talk about diesel consumption, and it's primarily down in Ketchikan. It's okay to burn a little bit of diesel. Burning diesel here for a couple days to handle that's a lot better than going out and making $100 or $200 million investment that you only use a couple times a year, right? So you got to weigh all those things and try to figure out the timing. So there's another project that we've been working on. This has been, we should hopefully be wrapping this up by the end of the year, maybe do some final presentations about December, January of next year. It's a regional hydrosite evaluation. We started this effort a while back, and I know it's really hard for you to see the slide. The only reason I put it up is to illustrate that this is our transmission line, and this is potential interconnection to Carrick, and down here is potential interconnection to Metlakatla. So by and large, we're looking at this section here. So we looked at projects that were 5 miles on either side of the transmission line corridor, and then 10 miles out. And then we would take a couple that might be, if there was a really high value asset a little bit further out from that, then we'd also look at that. So about 60 projects in that corridor that we took a high-level look at, and some of them we delved into a little bit deeper. We only had about $1.7 million, and frankly, for a hydro site, you could spend that on one site just to understand it well. So the whole purpose of this effort, and it's completely grant-funded, was to increase the level of knowledge on hydro projects in Southeast Alaska and within our transmission corridor, so we could better have better information to make the decision on the next asset or two that would be developed. So I already kind of spoke to this a little bit. The objective, build an electronic library of federal and state agencies, utility planners, and independent power developers, so they could use that information to better plan the future. 5-year process, level of effort, and probably the most important thing off here is that when it's all said and done, this will be it'll be publicly available. There'll be a static write-up on each one of the projects that we're looking at, and then there will be a dynamic model that's just vacant. So if you want to go put your own numbers in because you don't like our numbers, you can put it in there and tweak things a little bit, and however you might think you want to design it and get a number out of that. So some other stuff we're doing for feasibility, looking toward the future and planning considerations. So as many of you guys know, we did go look at geothermal out at Bell Island. We did initial surface investigation, and my assessment at the end of the day in our boards was that it was one of those balancing risk rewards, and we're to the point where we would have had to go out and drill a hole was the next phase, and that's $1 to $2 million, and the asset just didn't quite look that valuable for us on that profile. So we opted out of that. Wind, we're looking at putting a Met Tower up on South Mitkoff. I think with regard to wind, it's not a bad thing to look at. If, say, a big commercial load or industrial load came in tomorrow, how would you serve that load? Well, right now, we could serve probably most of that load most of the time. I could go deploy wind in a pretty short time period, though, and that would be kind of our bridge to the next hydro. So I think it's good for us at least to get some harder information to identify some sites. So if that does occur, then we're better positioned to handle that. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's tidal potential. We have a couple of great spots that are co-located with our transmission. And just to step back just a second, one reason why we looked at the transmission corridor is one thing that makes these projects infeasible a lot of the times is the distance to transmission. Over some of the terrain we have here, it usually averages about $2 million a mile. So it doesn't take much to drive the economics of a project down pretty quickly. And the interesting part is the technologies are advancing on some of these newer aspects of generation, and I don't like to be on the bleeding edge of technology, but so as those things mature a little bit better and the risk profile comes down for some of those new technologies, we might look at we may have an opportunity to put some tidal in or something different. Other considerations, there's been some transition to air source heat pumps. And as that comes in, then loads will drop as well, right? So if you get enough penetration in demand side management, which is basically, how can we do things more efficient on the end user, your actual energy consumption will go down on the whole system. They get biomass, that's been talked about quite a bit. The use of battery technology is evolving fairly rapidly, and it's getting quite a lot of widespread use down in the States. Solar and self-generation, I think a few of the folks in this room are probably even off the grid or partially off the grid. Waste recovery, there's some things. At one point, SEPA actually contacted some folks and looked at, what can we do with the trash collection in the whole region? Is there a way that we can efficiently transition that into an economic benefit for the communities rather than an expense going out the door? Our first look at that, the economics weren't quite there, but as things develop, maybe they do become more economic over time. Electric vehicle penetration, that's starting to happen pretty regularly. I was talking to another CEO up in Juneau, and they're getting like one new vehicle a week. So, over time, those are going to have some impact. Kind of hard to tow a boat with one so far, but those will come eventually. And those technologies are advancing very rapidly. So, all interesting things to look at, and kind of you have to bring these into your whole planning view. And obviously, impact of energy efficiency on loads. In general, across the U.S., loads are going down across the U.S. all over. And it's actually been very difficult for a lot of utilities down there because their business model is harshly impacted. They go out and build all these assets and get the infrastructure in to accommodate the customer, and then the customer goes away. And then weather trends, obviously that's something that we watch constantly every day. So, but it does impact how things roll and revenue for SEPA and how we manage our capital project expenditures. So just a little bit of blurb here on external engagement. One of the other things that SEPA does. I've got a few items that I'm working on. Looks like I lost part of a word up there. So on Lost Creek, we've got a portion on the original land conveyance. And Lost Creek is located up in the headwaters of Swan Lake. And when we got looking at the new land survey for the new inundation area, we found out that the original land survey missed 26 acres. So what that means is we still have 26 acres inside our project boundary that are owned. And to put that in real terms, what that means is when we go to relicense, about $1 million more to relicense because we have this very small piece of fed land in there. So right now I've got some legislation that's introduced in D.C. right now to try to address that would essentially have BLM convey those remaining lands like they were originally intended. That's not an uncommon thing across the state of Alaska. They take out an old topo map, they got a lake, rather than surveying the whole lake, they kind of draw polynomial boxes around it, and they just happen to miss some area up there. Also working on some Swan Lake water right adjudication, those things, DNR, you get those out, and it just seems to take a while to get those through the process. We also had a FERC land use fee increase of 71% last year, and we've been fighting that. That's not done yet. We're still fighting that at the federal level. Of course, SEPA's filed a couple of different amicus briefs with the roadless rule, because we see that as a potential devastating impact to our business and certainly to most of the lives that are down here in Southeast. So, and I have several DNR other issues I'm working on. We've got some land reclamation reserves that we're working through, and rights of ways on our transmission lines that have been lingering out there for like 6-7 years that we're having some difficulty moving forward, but currently engaging the DNR deputy commissioner and see if we can get some movement on those. And just even getting simple access for some of our tree clearing. So lots of challenges out there, but we do a lot on the policy level, and I think a lot of people don't see that going on behind the scenes, but I think it's important for folks to know the value that they're getting from us on that. So current reservoir levels, everybody wants to know that. So you can see real quick here, almost finished here. This is the yellow line is this year. The dotted line, that's our guide curve. It's not I'll say a firm, you can't go past it curve. It's a guide curve, that's why they call it a guide. So anyway, we kind of managed to this. We don't want to go below that because the way timing of inflows. And we have multiple years, and you can see, this is when the snow comes off, and bam, we're up here. It's kind of, it happens at different months in the year. Here's a picture of Swan Lake. It's a little bit more interesting. So you can see, I think from my angle here anyway, it's 330 there. So that was the original height of the dam, and these little spikes there is when we start spilling. That's how much higher the water is going through the fixed spillway. And so now, for the first few years, we're probably going to control right around here at 340 because we don't want to inadvertently have our flashboards go downstream. So, and then we'll get more comfortable with how the operation of it goes, but we're able to go up to 345. And I always like to finish this slide. I tote this at all the conferences and everywhere I go. Abundant and affordable energy is the cornerstone of economic development, and we're doing our best to keep it that way. And so, appreciate your time. Thank you, and certainly happy to answer any questions you might have.
2 questions for you. What do you see as the lifespan of your underwater power lines?
It really depends. It depends. I think 60 to 80 years. Sometimes they're even getting out of them now. So that's why we survey them as well as we can. But they go down in some pretty deep trenches. My concern points are when they go over a ledge and they hit the sharp edge here, and these cables are big. There's a lot of weight hanging off of them. So, like I say, it's not if, it's when you're going to have to replace them. And our board's actually been talking and kind of having a few discussions and thinking, at what point do you proactively just plan to start replacing them? And that's one of the higher risk issues for Petersburg and Wrangell, because that's how they're fed. So we're watching that one closely, and I'll probably do another survey this year. I'll put it in the budget this year to see and look at, best that we can analyze where we're at, and do that every 5 years. It's a pretty big exercise to replace the cables. It takes a special boat that you have to schedule. There's only a couple in the world that do it. Most of the cable comes out of overseas, very, very long lead time. And on top of that, it's all expensive, right? It's I think the last time we looked, about $5 million to replace a couple cables. So,
my second question for you, a little more on that third turbine for Tyee. Where are you in the process?
So I'm in the process now of identifying somebody to give an additional opinion on that. Looking at a couple of different contractors. As part of our hydrosite evaluation, that was covered somewhat, but I want to look at it at a little bit different perspective. There's some political issues that go with that, obviously. For instance, as an example, when we did Swan Lake, we had some opposition to that project because they thought their project was serve the public better. And so anytime you look at an actual capacity increase, you open yourself up to lawsuits and other things as well. So there's some dynamics and nuances there that I want to take a close look at. How often will it actually be used? And there's also some side benefits. So say one of the turbines goes down at Tyee, then we would have a backup. So, and if you're doing some maintenance on one turbine, you could run the other two. So there's value there. So trying to put that in terms that I could present to my board to explain it well, and then come to some type of a decision point.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else have a question? I wanted to ask briefly, when Senator Murkowski was here about a year ago, she mentioned that hydropower was not considered a renewable resource and was trying to work on that issue, and you didn't mention that on your legislative and regulatory initiatives. Can you speak to that a little bit and what the benefit would be of having it considered a renewable resource?
Certainly. So as most people know, Senate Bill 2012 last year failed like the last day or two right before the session ended. A lot of those same issues are working their way up toward the top. I think there'll be some type of an omnibus energy bill that will contain several of those provisions. One of those benefits might be, so if there's federal money that's going toward renewables, well, if they're throwing $100 million at a solar project and a wind project, well, why shouldn't they be putting that toward hydro? And if it's not labeled as a renewable, then it doesn't get recognition as that status. So there's potentially some monetary benefit, as well as there's a whole bunch of other legislation that was wrapped into that particular bill. That one thing, another, and I don't put them all the things that we're chasing up there, but one of them that I've been advocating here is for, as we get into license renewals that occur in 2030 and 2031 for Tyee and Swan, respectively, that's going to play into how long you can get a license renewal for. Typical license used to be 50 years, and now, folks get a little bit random. Sometimes it's a 30-year, sometimes, and it's probably $3 to $5 million to relicense our projects for projects that's been sitting there running for 50 years. And so the price of relicensing is ridiculous. And if you're going to have to go through that exercise to do that much and spend that much money on studies and all this other thing to get it relicensed for a longer period, you should be able to get the license for a longer period of time, frankly. So those are some nuances to the legislation that hopefully we'll be able to make some improvements there.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Trey.
Thank you, and I apologize. I'm going to have to go get a plane.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the mayor's report, which is not pulling up. Hang on. Sometimes I have to do it a couple times. There we go. We are seeking letters of interest. The borough is seeking letters of interest from Petersburg residents willing to serve on the hospital board until the October 2017 municipal election. There are 2 seats available. Letters of interest may be addressed to the borough clerk and emailed to dthompson@petersburgak.gov, mailed to P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, AK 99833, or you can drop them off at the Borough Administration Office at 12 South Nordic Drive, which is where the old building was. My husband keeps trying to drive me up the hill every time he drops me off to a meeting, but we're back at our old location. The Historic Preservation Commission, the borough is seeking a letter of interest for 3 vacant seats on the Historic Preservation Commission. Seat 1 is reserved for an archaeologist or an at-large member, and the term of the seat ends 12/31/2017. Seat 2 is reserved for an assembly member with the term ending 12/31/2019. Seat 3 is reserved for a planning commissioner with a term ending 12/31/2018. Letters of interest may be submitted to the borough clerk as outlined earlier in this report. The Alaska Mental Health Trust. I attended the public meeting held by the Mental Health Trust in Petersburg last week regarding the land exchange with the Forest Service, and I also testified to the House Resources Committee in favor of HB 155, which was the bill regarding the Mental Health Trust and Forest Service land exchange. One thing that they noted at that meeting was that, as you know, this has taken a long time. It's been under consideration for about 10 years. Our request to do this gets rolled into a federal omnibus lands bill, and so can get pulled out or used as a chip to trade for other things. So we'll keep plugging at it, but it's not, it's a long process. Representative Don Young will be visiting Petersburg. He, his wife, and staff Chad Paget will visit Petersburg on Monday, April 10th, 2017. A community meeting will be held in the assembly chambers of the municipal building from 2 to 3 p.m., and the public is invited to attend and welcome our guests. In addition, Representative Young will hold a business roundtable discussion at the Petersburg Elks Lodge for interested local business owners. A no-host bar will be held from 5:30 till 6:30 with dinner to follow, and main course choices are halibut and tenderloin steak. Reservations to attend the business roundtable must be made by the end of the day, Wednesday, April 5th. You can call the Elks at 772-4601 to reserve your seat, and this event is sponsored by John and Pam Jensen. If you have questions, you can contact Mayor Jensen for more information at 907-518-0009. And then an update on Richard Burke's ATV initiative petition application. And if you want to take that over, Deb.
Certainly. Just this morning, we did let Mr. Burke know that his application as submitted was insufficient, and with a very detailed letter from the attorney as to why it's insufficient. So he has taken it, and he now has opportunity to redo his ordinance and submit a new initiative petition.
And you said the deadline for that was July 3rd?
Well, by July 3rd, if he wants the question to be on this ballot in October. By July 3rd, I will have had to receive the application, certify it as sufficient, present the petition, gather all the signatures. He would need to gather all the signatures needed, and I would need to certify all the signatures as good to go by July 3rd, and then it will be on the ballot.
Okay, so
he has some time.
Okay. And then many folks are aware, Vice News was visiting Petersburg last week and in town doing a story on healthcare in Alaska, and they followed Melina Marvin, who is sitting here today, and asked her questions on how that is going. So, and I think they were looking for other story pitches as well, so that was kind of... story about KFS. Okay. And for those who couldn't hear Melina, the story will be airing this week about KFSK and healthcare in Alaska. So thank you for that. Moving on to the manager's report.
Thank you very much. Coming through, okay. Kind of as a change of pace, and we do this ever so often, I asked the department heads this week to give me some items they are proud or excited about, rather than just kind of a laundry list of all their accomplishments. So, please enjoy. Power and Light has purchased replacement poles for our big, large banners. These are the poles that actually hold up the big flags, which is one of the big community things to be proud of. Those poles take a tremendous amount of stress with those big flags, and it took some work, but they worked hard with Public Works and the police department to finalize locations. Existing poles will be utilized until the new units are installed, and we should be able to get another 40 or 50 years out of them and not have the poles fall down. Power and Light building remodel project is expected to go out for bids next week, so we'll start to see what those costs will be. And a big thank you from Power and Light to Sandy and the fire department for helping Power and Light complete their required first aid and CPR training. For the police department, I'll use their words here, it is all about the building. It has been a really long time coming, but worth the wait. We appreciate the efforts of those who work so hard to make it possible. Very thankful for the new folks at the police department and dispatch. It is very hard to find people who are qualified to do these jobs at any price in any location. We have a pretty supportive community, and we really appreciate that. Again, that was from the police department and dispatch. And they wanted to also extend a large thank you to their long-term staff. They're a 15-person department with 5 people currently in training and a 6th person whose training was just completed a few weeks ago. The officers and dispatchers have done incredible work, piling up overtime without complaint and supporting each other heroically. It's been very hard, and the strain on all of the people is very, very real. They are ready to breathe a sigh of relief sometime this summer when the new folks start working solo. Sandra wanted to put out how proud she is of her staff at Parks and Rec. It's gone through a lot the last year or so, and everyone has been working really hard and together as a team, and we do all appreciate that. Real neat event, which is Saturday, April 8th from 10 to 12, which is the Children's Health Fair. The pool will actually have a mini lifeguard stations for elementary school age children to participate in lifeguard skills in and out of the water. And the Ducky Dive will be Saturday, April 15th from 12 to 3, geared towards children 12 and under. This event offers lunch by the Emblem Club, prizes, and an open swim for our younger folks. Long time coming, but we will be posting and sending notice of the impending demolition of the dangerous burned-out building in the Island Mobile Home Park next week. Not sure we're getting really close to a definite date, but should occur next week, April 10th through the 14th, and it'll be really nice to know we were able to get this area cleaned up for the residents up there, as well as the police officers who keep having to visit. So thanks to Public Works, and they're very excited about getting that one behind them. The petition process for the paving LID has begun. Information packets and petitions were sent out to 7 neighborhoods on March 24th, with petitions due back to the Borough Clerk by April 14th at 5 p.m. Had some positive feedback, as well as a submission of 2 signatures so far. Whether a neighborhood takes advantage or not, it is nice to know we have a system in place where folks can work together on projects that benefit them directly. The harbor is very proud of the positive relationship they have with the local fleet and the customer base and the reputation Petersburg has amongst the visiting public. We get a lot of folks who stop in here because they heard it from someone else, how welcoming the community is. All of the recent harbor facility and community upgrades and comments from the users praising the benefits they recognize. These are folks who, use the harbor day in and day out or visit and been nothing but complimentary towards all of the infrastructure that has been done and community upgrades that they take advantage of. And wanted to reach out and say how wonderful it was that the borough staff came together to deal with some recent and unexpected health and family issues in different departments. Everybody worked really well together to support some employees that are going through some tough times. Liz was very excited about the possibility of getting our land selection legislation through this year for the borough. She's headed for Juneau, I believe this week, and one more hearing in the Senate. Hopefully it will then get rescheduled to Senate rules and then an actual vote in the Senate and then moving on to the House and the governor. So with some luck, we should have this done this year. She wanted to put out special thanks and appreciation for Joe Bertignoli's work. For those of you who didn't know, when our building inspector on this project was on vacation for a couple weeks, Joe B. stepped in and met that role, kept the project moving forward, and we all definitely appreciate that. And a big thing that's being helpful, it's helping everyone really, which is our efforts to streamline the connection between our mapping system and the property tax database, should result in more accurate information for mailings, assessments, ownerships, etc. A lot of work to do, but we're getting there where those systems can be connected and more information will be easily obtainable by folks. Sheila wanted to put out how proud she is of her employees who work day and night, working hard physically and mentally fulfilled the mission at the manor. She asked me to read that mission, which is in partnership with the community, provide a safe, secure, and caring environment, offering services which support independence, dignity, choice, privacy, and meet the needs of all residents. It is not every community that has an assisted living type facility, and the fact that the community here in Petersburg not only supports it through their property taxes, but supports it in all of the volunteer work they do up there in that facility on a fairly regular basis. And she wanted to talk and thank all of the people over the past 6 years maintaining and improving the 30-year-old building at Elderly Housing. This has been a roof replacement, new carpets, paint throughout the common areas of the building, window replacement, hot water heater conversion, installation of handicap showers, and many other smaller details that make this home for some very wonderful people. Again, thanks to the community and all of the folks who helped make those things happen. And she wanted to reach out and how appreciative she is of the families who trust their loved ones with us at the manor. That allows them able to live their lives as family and not caregivers, and tell us how much they appreciate the RAs and the staff up there. Sandy is most proud of the people who volunteer for the fire department and providing fire emergency medical services and search and rescue. They dedicate countless unpaid hours away from their families, jobs, friends, etc., to train and respond to emergencies in and around Petersburg. Even though several of our volunteers are less available at certain times of the year, others have stepped up to fill the void. And let's not forget the new batch of firefighters that are currently taking classes. So hopefully all of them will continue to see the positive aspects of volunteering in this way. And she wanted to talk about how grateful the improved fire department radio communications and how much the volunteers appreciate that with the installation of the repeater and the new police department dispatch center, how much it helps them to stay in contact. And, Jody, Debbie, Mindy, myself, all of us, grateful for the staff here in finance and admin and all of the help Public Works has given us. We've moved this building twice in the last year, moved up to PIA and then back, and it's wonderful to work with folks here that are, happy and motivated to do their job, and the impact it has on the community as a whole. Having to try to remember where we are at any given moment in time, but we're back here, and we do appreciate the patience of everyone. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Steve? All right.
And it can be on anything. I can answer. Okay.
All right. Moving on to unfinished business, we have ordinance 2017-03, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code sections 14.20.070 and 14.20.390A, section 1, municipal harbors, to eliminate a prepayment discount on annual mortgage rates and to increase the minimum rental term to qualify for the mortgage rates, and this is in its second reading. Do I have a motion to consider?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor, that we consider ordinance 2017-03. Is there any discussion?
I have one question, Cindy.
Sure.
How much would this serve the harbor department?
Yes, that's the harbor master speaking. We've calculated between 24,000 and 30,000.
Did you hear that, Mark?
No, I didn't get the number.
Glow said between $24,000 and $30,000, and that's annually, correct? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, will the clerk call a roll?
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Thank you.
And ordinance 2017-03 passes on second reading. The next item on our agenda is Resolution 2017-07, a resolution opposing H.R. 232, a bill authorizing states to select and acquire certain National Forest System lands to be managed and operated by the state for timber production and other purposes under the laws of the state.
Moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Strand, to consider Resolution 2017-07. Is there any discussion?
Sure. Go ahead, Nancy.
Clarify for me that a yes vote is?
A yes vote is stating the borough's opposition to H.R. 232. Go ahead, Jay.
Many things were said last week and this week from members of the audience, so I won't, I guess I'll summarize that by saying I pretty much agree with every single point raised. I'd like to be devil's advocate and argue against some of the people who have spoken, but I can't. I think H.R. 232 is terrible for Alaska. I think it's terrible for Southeast Alaska, and bringing it home, I think it's terrible for the community of Petersburg. I see very little, if any, redeeming qualities to it. I'll definitely be voting for this resolution.
Thank you. Did you want to say any more to it, Bob?
No, other than I can debate old growth logging and I can debate the young growth and all kinds of issues. I believe strongly there needs to be a timber industry in Southeast Alaska. And the way it's now currently done, if you were trying to get a loan to continue in that, you couldn't do it because you can't guarantee any kind of supply. You can't guarantee any kind of stability. You can't guarantee any kind of work wages for competent people. And so the whole issue, to me, needs to be discussed openly, publicly, and things need to change. And I can't support the bill as written, but I certainly can support the needs for an industry in Southeast Alaska. We need to diversify our economy.
And I guess I would reiterate that, and I'd like to see some value-added product developed here in Southeast Alaska, not necessarily shipping round logs overseas. And so, in part, that's why I would vote against this. If there's no other discussion? Did you have another comment, Nancy?
You're going to vote against it, or you're going to
vote against H.R. 232 in favor of the resolution. Will the clerk call the roll?
Cindy?
Oh, did you want to speak? Sure.
Yeah, sorry about that. Read through this as it's rewritten. I still have some concerns with some of the wording there.
Mark, Hang on just a second. You're not coming through very clearly.
Speak right into his phone.
Is that any better?
Much.
I think it is, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have a couple issues with the way it was rewritten. I like it better than it was before. It wasn't quite as, I don't know what the right word is to say, blunt or whatever, but saying that, it's going to totally ruin conditions in Southeast for certain other businesses other than the logging. But one of it's written in the seventh whereas on this rewriting, it says the school funding for the Petersburg school system operating costs that would disappear under this bill. I'm not so sure that it is going to disappear. I know at this point right now, I don't know that we're even going to get secure rural schools funded this year. If this bill 232 did go through, which I don't feel it probably will pass Congress, but I don't know that PILT would totally disappear. I can't believe that they're going to take, if it passed 232, they're going to take all 2 million acres out of the Petersburg Borough. So, that isn't a very accurate statement. I'm not going to go through the action of making a motion to amend it, but I'm not going to be voting in favor of this resolution. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, will the clerk call the roll?
Mark?
No.
Cindy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the resolution passes 6-1.
5-1.
I'm sorry, 5-1.
You're close.
Still passes.
And let's see, I'll make sure I'm in the right place. We are on to new business. Is everybody doing okay, or do we need to take another quick break?
Yes.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break.
What's the matter with you guys?
I wrote down 5 and then said 6.
Oh, yeah, you.
One in.
I'm wondering if we're
I like that.
Wouldn't we have?
Kurt, are you going to be here at 3?
Went through.
Yeah, he's in.
Yeah, I haven't left yet.
Kurt has to be here at 3.
I just want to make sure we're going to have a quorum.
Well, I'll be here. I mean, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, so,
I'm the only wild card.
no, I'm not sure.
Mark's going
At
too.
3, yeah, 10 to 3.
Pardon?
Mark's not going to be there.
That's what I'm thinking, Mark's not going to be, but that'll,
Just barely.
You need that 4 in the room.
yeah.
So I checked with Debbie before today. That's what I-
All right, let us call the meeting back to order, and we will jump into new business and ordinance 2017-04, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code Section 14.16, electricity, to add a municipal power rate for municipal buildings of the Petersburg Borough as designated and approved by the Borough Assembly. And do I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Lynn, that we consider this ordinance. Is there any discussion? And I should have read the action. This will create a municipal power rate to apply only to municipal buildings of the Petersburg Borough receiving a large commercial rate as designated and approved by the Assembly. Petersburg Municipal Power and Light has prepared a spreadsheet of the 15 municipal buildings in order of usage that the Assembly could approve to use the municipal power rate if this ordinance is adopted. So are there any questions? Or go ahead, Bob.
Oh, you ready for comments? Mm-hmm. Okay. I can't support this ordinance for a number of reasons. One of them is I think that it masks part of the cost of municipal government here in Petersburg. For that part. Second, I don't think that it puts the burden of the additional cost, more burden, back onto the other users. And so I can't go along with it as it is. I think it ought to remain the same.
Mark, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm thinking along the same lines as Member Lynn. I think I understand from reading this that if this ordinance did pass, it wouldn't mean that this rate would actually be implemented to any of these buildings, but at least it would be on the books, ordinance form so you could, but I think if it did pass and some certain buildings got put on that rate, it would affect all the other ratepayers in our borough. So in my mind, it would just be like another tax. So I'm not in favor of it.
Yes.
As it is, I am also not in favor of it. However, as I mentioned the last time we discussed this, I think in the long term we're going to have, by default, going to have a need for a closer financial relationship with both the hospital and school. So what I looked at was just taking the hospital, aquatic center, boiler room, aquatic center, high school, middle school, gym, and the elementary school, and applying the municipal power rate to them. Therefore, instead of $237,995.76 in annual revenues lost, anyone feel free to check my math, that would reduce that number to $137,174.51. Again, $137,174.51. I think it strikes a good compromise of wanting to support some of our essential pieces of infrastructure in this community that we're going to be tied to no matter what financially, while also, for lack of a better way to put it, being reasonable towards power and light and not putting such a strong burden on them. So I guess I would like to move to amend this to only include the hospital, aquatic center, aquatic boiler room, high school, middle school, high school gym, and the elementary school.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded, and I didn't catch all of that. The gym, the boiler, the aquatic center, the school, the hospital.
Yep, the high school, middle school, gym, and the elementary school.
High school and middle school gym and the elementary school.
More or less just anything tied into schools or the hospital.
Is there any discussion on the amendment?
I would just want to add that the schools I can definitely agree with because that is definitely coming out of our taxpayers' dollars pocket. Where the hospital, on the other hand, should be operated more like an enterprise fund because, they can generate $13 million a year and where the schools can't. So, not that I'm going to change your amendment, but I agree that the schools for sure should be that way, but we go, because these have to be voted on anyway by the assembly, right? So these are the only things we're adding. So, okay, I'll just go with that for right now.
Yes, Bob.
I would somewhat agree with Kurt, is that if we were going to take the money, we're looking at the hospital, and I think somewhere around $50,000 a year. If we were going to put that into a fund for future building of the hospital or for a building fund, I could go along with it. But I agree with that. They're an enterprise fund, and they reported, very strong earnings, and what they had in the bank. So if we to vote on your motion, I have to vote no. I would go along, however, just with the schools.
Yes, Nancy.
I agree about the schools, and the hospital needs to put this extra money, if it were going into a replacement fund, not just to be spent willy-nilly for not being able to use the word I'd like to. I can't support the amendment either unless it was just the schools.
Okay.
Debbie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the hospital indicated when making this request it would be setting aside the saved money for capital improvement projects. Is this correct?
That is correct. In their letter requesting it, that is what they indicated. And I'm not sure that we as an assembly would have the right to tell them exactly what they could do with the savings. Maybe we can, but
they've indicated that is their intent. If
they have, yes.
Through.
Yes, they have.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve, and then Member Strand.
Just to clarify what Debbie just said, the charter for the borough clearly says the hospital is allowed to operate as they see fit, without basically the borough telling them how to run their business. So Debbie's correct. We could not tell them how to spend that money. The hospital indicated that's what they wanted to use, but I don't believe the borough assembly could dictate that to them.
Nancy?
Then I guess we have to wait for them to change the wording themselves, huh? Is this the only time we're going to vote on this, or is this the first reading?
First reading.
First reading.
Which includes a public hearing if this passes, we would have a second reading with the public hearing.
Yeah, but if it doesn't pass, then no more readings.
That's correct.
So.
Is there any other discussion? So we are voting on, go ahead.
Is this just on the amendment in this first vote?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so this is Jay's amendment to include the school buildings and the hospital. All right?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Are capital improvements the same as depreciation, a capital improvement fund the same as a depreciation fund? Or whatever fund?
Yes, it's basically saying accounting for future capital spending, and that's what depreciation is.
Are we good? All right.
Okay, on the amendment, Nancy?
No.
Bob?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Cindy?
Yes. And so the amendment fails.
Amendment fails. We still have to vote on the original.
So is there any more discussion on the original ordinance?
Yes, we get to vote on this again. Can it be amended, the second reading?
Nancy?
There won't be a second reading.
Correct.
If we vote it down, we're done.
Passes, as it is right now with no amendment, then there will be a second reading. If it does not, it's done.
Okay.
Would it be inappropriate to make another amendment to this ordinance at this point?
I think you can go right ahead.
Okay, I would like to go to the J's, but let's eliminate the hospital. Well,
second.
Yeah. No, everything he said, but just eliminate the hospital.
Okay.
It's been moved by Member Wallhuter, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor, that we include the municipal rate for the school and school-related buildings only. Is there any discussion on this amendment?
Just to clarify, we're talking about the elementary school, the high school, the aquatic center?
Yeah, to be specific, that would be the aquatic boiler, the aquatic center, high school, middle school, and gym, and the elementary school.
For clarification purposes, if I may, I'm sorry.
Please.
The school pays the heating bill on the aquatic boilers.
That's correct.
Did I get that right? Carl, do you remember this one?
The borough also pays.
Right there.
The general fund also pays for the aquatic center as well, the electricity for the lights. So it's split. The school and the general fund each pay a portion of the aquatic center.
Thank you.
Did you have any comment, Mark?
No.
Okay. Hearing no more discussion, will the clerk call the roll on this second amendment to allow a municipal rate for the school-related buildings, the aquatic boiler, the aquatic center?
Yes. Cindy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Passes 4-2.
And the ordinance passes 4-2, and we will have a public hearing on that.
Actually, we still need to do the original motion. So that was amendment number 2 that passed?
That's true.
Okay.
Okay.
All set?
Clarification. So now, because we've got all these other 14 or 15 buildings on here, if we pass this resolution, then we're including those 15 buildings?
No, we are not.
Okay,
As
okay,
amended.
so this, as amended, okay.
Amended, as
Thank you.
amended.
That's what I thought, but,
Okay.
it's
No, thank
2
you for
hours into a
clarifying
meeting.
that.
Okay, so this is on the ordinance as amended.
Correct.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Nancy?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
It passes.
And that ordinance passes.
So in its first reading, we will have second reading next meeting with a public hearing.
That's correct.
So can I get a clarification? The way I understand it, the amendment that we voted on it, we're just saying you will give a municipal rate to the school and its buildings associated with it.
Mark, you need to reposition your phone.
Well, it's about 3 inches from my...
There,
Oh,
that's good.
Well, just for clarification there, so what we just passed was just voting for a municipal rate for just the school and associated buildings with the school, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is Ordinance 2017-05, an ordinance proposing an amendment to the Home Rule Charter of the Petersburg Borough to allow the City of Kupernof to own and operate a harbor within the Petersburg Borough, and directing that the proposed charter amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. If this ordinance is adopted, it will submit a change to the Petersburg Borough Charter that will allow the City of Kupernof to own and operate a harbor facility within the borough, and that will go to the Petersburg voters at the next regular or special election occurring more than 90 days after adoption. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Walhuter, seconded by Member Lynn, to adopt Ordinance 2017-05. Is there any discussion?
Walter, Cindy?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this ordinance. Out there.
All right. Member Strand?
This is a step that has to be taken in order for the state, or Kupernof, the state to accept it, transfer to Kupernof by itself. And I'm totally in favor of it too, as well.
And this came about when we were talking to the state and they were asking for funds and we wanted to be able to allow
So they're
Kupernof
already half in favor of it, so.
If I may, just to clarify, the state is not, to our knowledge, the state has not made a current offer that would do this, but if they come back at some point and want to talk about this again, this would eliminate that issue in the Petersburg Charter. They would prohibit the state from dealing directly with Kupernof and allowing that harbor to go to Kupernof.
Hearing no other discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And that ordinance passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is 17-099, proposed FY 2018 enterprise funds and motor pool budgets. And on March 24th, 2017, the Assembly held a work session to review the proposed budgets for all enterprise funds, and that includes electric, water, wastewater, sanitation, harbor, assisted living, elderly housing, and the motor pool. This is the Assembly's opportunity to make amendments to the proposed budgets. Is there a motion to approve the budget?
I'll move to approve the budget.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Walhuter to adopt the FY 2018 enterprise funds and motor pool budgets. Is there any discussion?
I have a number of items I'd like to address. One of them is I'm going to look at the electrical fund and the bottom line there for plan improvement where we have $750,000. And that was to purchase the property adjacent to the power and light building. Is that correct?
Correct. And configure that into a parking lot that was easier for the trucks to get in and out of.
Right. I think that there's higher priorities, and looking at that cost of that, I can't support spending that kind of a money on that project. And so I would move that we drop that project for next fiscal year.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Strand to amend the budget to drop the $775,000?
Yes.
Correct.
For configuring a parking lot next to the power and light building. Is there any further discussion on that? Yes, Nancy?
This will take a lengthy process with the Corps of Engineers in order to put gravel where pilings are. And perhaps this would be a better thing to consider once some of that core paperwork has been taken care of. It's going to take a while.
Any other comments?
Are you there, Cindy?
I sure am.
I support this amendment, looking at the budget. I think $750,000 is a lot to spend on a parking lot. I'm not saying that it might not be a good thing to pursue in the future, but with some of the other items listed by Power and Light Superintendent Joe Nelson, I think to take care of the infrastructure, the transmission lines and such is more important than this, and we'll see how everything shakes out if we go through that process to use the reserves to, build up the infrastructure. So I'm in favor of this amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, will the clerk call the roll on the amendment to approve the budget with the elimination of the funds for the parking lot remodel next to Power and Light Building?
Just a clarification, are we talking about the whole budget now, or just the enterprise fund, or just this?
Actually, if I could clarify, we're actually not totally approving what you guys, completely approving what you had, but if you have any concerns with what was brought forth at the work session, now's the time to talk about it, to remove it. Okay. You will get an ordinance to approve the budget.
Okay, so this is just discussion.
Well, it's more than discussion. It's an action item, because if you want to remove something from that budget, you need to say so now.
Okay.
The reason I asked the question is because I have concerns on a couple other items too, so. Sure. But do you want to?
One at a time?
Yes. Then we can do that. I think that'd be an easier way to handle it. So let's just vote on the parking lot.
Removing that.
Acquisition and reconfiguring.
Okay. Are we ready for roll call?
We are.
Okay. Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and that's unanimous. You had other items for
I do.
discussion?
No, it's rolling, man.
Okay. I want to go to the Harbor Department now. I think I can go a little bit here. No. I want to talk about harbor rates, and I can see makes sense what was proposed here, but I've been hearing quite a few comments related to the drive-down facility, and and the bulkhead for that matter. We have $20+ million in those facilities, and from the drive-down, I'm hearing people saying that the rates we have are way too low, and I'd like to take a look at that and have some discussion here, because I really do think that we need to have an increase in the rates on the bulkhead for next fiscal year, and an increase in the fees on the drive-down facility, and a charge on the bulkhead, however minimal, we want to make it. And I'd like to see some discussion along those lines here. I have in mind at least a 10% increase on the drive-down and a flat fee on the bulkhead, but I'd like to hear some discussion around that whole issue.
So is that a motion?
I will make a motion to do so, and I would even put a $50 per use on the bulkhead, just for a place to start.
Second.
Been moved by Member Wallhuter, seconded by Member Strand, that we...
Bob Lynn.
I'm sorry. I'm really out of it today. I need more coffee.
You did that right.
That we increase the bulkhead charges 10% on the drive-down dock, $50 a use on the bulkhead is what we are voting on. Go ahead, Kurt.
For the sake of discussion, can I ask Gloria Ann, what her short-term plans are for raising to meet the needs that Bob is suggesting here? You and I talked a little bit, and I can't remember. Was it going to be an increase in harbor mortgage rates in the next 2-3 years? Was your plan?
Well, we actually are proposing a 12% increase across the board, which would include the drive down next year, the fiscal year 17-18. So do you want to do 10% now and do another 12%, or is that what you're after? Or?
No, I had just for next year. I said,
and then 12% again? Or do you want to jump it and do?
No, I didn't go any farther than that, Glo.
Oh, okay.
That point.
So 10%.
When they raise 2% after that, that's fine. But I mean,
oh, okay. Well, yeah, we're planning on across the board everything 12% next year. So if you want to jump it would turn roughly the usage. It's $2.50 to use the bulkhead and the drive down. So it's a permit to use the drive down facility. Right now, $2.50 per lineal foot annually. So 10% would be, 25 cents, which would, would maybe generate $4,000 or $5,000. We sold last year, we sold 234 drive down permits. So this year I just sold number 125 this year. So, I mean, that's pretty I guess it's harmless. We've already, it would get a little convoluted because we've already posted the permits for FY, we go January to January, so we've already sold the permit. So this really would only go into effect for 6 months next January if we were to implement that. So you'd see that 10% next January, raise 10% next January rather than, I guess I could go back and charge those people. I guess I can't do that. You'd have to wait till next January.
Well, can I clarify something?
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, starting in January of 2018, there will be a 12% across the board?
Yeah.
That's what you've got planned already? Thank you.
And that's including mortgage rates?
Yes,
so if you're already paying $50 a lineal foot per year for your boat, you do the math. So, and right now, currently with the drive down and all that stuff, we're doing it by the foot. Instead of having just a blanket, you got a 32-foot boat, he's going to pay $50 for a permitted X to pay more than that if you wanted to add an additional $50. I think it might be kind of convoluted to try to just add a dollar value more than just say a per foot value. So I think I would allow Gloria Ann just to go ahead with it, and if it looks like we need more money generated, I think the enterprise funds are capable of doing that, because they know what their operating costs are and they know what they're going to need. So if she's suggesting that we just hold off and let things ride the way they are, and in a year from now we go up 12% across the board, and I'm going to vote for that.
Nancy.
So did I hear you say that to use the drive down, it's $12.50?
No, it's $2.50 a lineal foot. So for a 58-footer, it's $150.
And then at the risk of being off topic by asking what the comparison to $50 per foot is to charging by displacement.
We currently, are you talking about moorage?
Yeah.
We do by displacement now. We do square footage versus lineal foot. It's just the way it comes across when you do because we have set stalls. We have 9 different class sizes of stalls. It's easier to explain it to you per stall length, but it is the formula for a 20-foot stall is based on $34 a lineal foot versus Kurt, who's in a 75-foot stall, he's paying $50 a lineal foot because it's based on the square footage.
So a wide boat pays the same amount as a narrow boat.
If they're in a short stall, they'll pay less.
If a boat is in a 75-foot stall and it's a narrow boat, they pay the same amount as a 70 wider boat?
Because our stalls are set. I can't go and put in another float and tie another boat in there. So, yeah, if it's but we do have things in place, like you have to be within 10 feet of the lineal foot of the stall, so you will never have, you'll never have a small boat in a big stall. So therefore, there are things in place so that it doesn't get out of control for that. But yeah, it would be one thing if I was able to move the stall, the floats, the finger floats around and say, okay, I got a skinny, 1950 built boat, and I could put in another finger float and get another, but I can't do that. So if you're long and super skinny, you need the length, not the width.
Right, but if you're long and wide, the fingers have to be set to accommodate something like that, and it just seems like the way you're doing it isn't the same as charging by displacement.
Nope, we are changing by displacement, and those boats that can't fit into their allocated, they can't tie up there. So.
Okay. Just for the sake of streamlining, given Glow's plan for the future, I'm unable to support this amendment.
I've still got a couple questions for Glow. So on your proposal, it wouldn't take place until January 1 of 18. There would be no increase other than what you're proposing until January 1 of 18.
For what?
Well, you were going to propose a 12% raise for next fiscal year.
Yep, in the next budget cycle.
In the next budget cycle.
July. So it would happen in July.
Of 2018.
Yeah.
And you're saying your logic is that it's better to do it all at one shot rather than do it like we do for the, let's say, the electrical fund, where we had a rate increase over 3 or 4 years, or like we do for the sanitation and a few others? Your logic is just do it one shot.
Well, I was just, when we did the waterfront master plan, they just said across the board. So
yeah,
that I didn't start picking and choosing. Yeah, I'd love to jump launch permits, all kinds of things, but yeah, and that is our proposal to go across the board. So that's across the board.
Nancy.
Hey, just to clarify, a 10% raise that Bob is thinking about couldn't happen till next June anyway, or next January.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, it would in effect lower the 12% raise increase that you've proposed. The 10% increase wouldn't take place any sooner than the 12% increase is going to.
No. The 10% increase would be implemented in January if we passed it. The 12% increase wouldn't start until January of 2018, correct?
What I was proposing was
July of 2018, I'm sorry.
2018?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But you were saying that you're estimating the impact of doing a 10% over a 12% increase would be about $5,000 or $6,000, somewhere in that range?
Total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any more discussion on this? Then we are going to vote on the amendment to, I've got notes scratched all over here, to raise the rates 10% on the drive-down dock, $50 for each use of the bulkhead, and that would be implemented in January of 2018, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Will the clerk call a roll?
Bob?
No.
Jay?
No.
Kurt?
Nope.
Nancy?
No.
Cindy?
No.
Mark?
No.
All right, and the amendment is voted down. Are there any other items on the budget up for discussion? On the overall budget?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any other items?
No, I think overall we did a really pretty good job on it.
I'm seeing some furrowed eyebrows there, Kurt. Do you have any
No,
items?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
And how about you, Mark?
No, they're enterprise funds. They have to answer to the public.
Okay.
So, if they want to increase rates, so let them do it.
So we are voting on the overall amended budget now?
Yes, as amended, so to accept the amendments that were passed, which is the amendment number 1, to drop the parking lot money.
And also the...
Well, it failed, right? Amendment number 2 failed.
Didn't we also include the municipal rate for the... Oh, okay. I am getting confused. It's all budget. Okay. So, the amended... I'm going to let you read it, Deb.
Basically, you guys are saying you're good with the proposed FY 2018 enterprise funds and motor pool budgets as amended in our discussion right now. Okay?
All right.
Cindy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to communications. Does anyone have any communications to report? I had a couple items, letters on a couple points. There was some discussion about float houses up the Stikine that we heard from Representative Christ Tompkins, who's looking into that issue. I also had a letter about potential conflicts between cruise lines and outfitter guide use up in the Tracy Endicott area, which is now part of our borough. And the individual who had the concern said he will be speaking to that to the Assembly at some point in the future. And we also had a couple other letters that came in favor of removing fluoridation from our waters. I believe Tamara Evans was one, and I'm not remembering who else provided a letter. And that was transmitted this morning. That there. I just wanted to acknowledge that we had...
Teresa Funt.
That's correct. Recognitions. Are there any recognitions?
Once again, I'd like to recognize the fire department and the ongoing education of new members. Once again, they're doing a fine job.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? And moving on to the next item on our agenda was Dana Tinas was put on the agenda to speak to the fluoridation of the municipal water supply, and she spoke earlier in the agenda. So we can move on to our last item, which is a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.